Hi everyone, this is Emily Leiphart here for Tailored Expressions, and in today's video I'm featuring 4 cards using the new ink and cardstock release. There are 7 gorgeous new colors and you're going to love them all. Before I get started on my cards, I wanted to do a quick overview of the new colors to show you how they look and how I do my ink swatches. On them, I've stamped on the block Love to show what the inks look like on a larger surface, and I've also stamped a thin lined sentiment from Max and Millie. I do like stamping sentiments in various colors, and this helps me gauge whether or not a sentiment would look good in a certain color. Now I'll use the ink to paper technique and show you how the inks look when swatched directly onto the paper. Here are the sheets of coordinating cardstock. Don't they look amazing together? To create my 4 cards, I'll be using the Create in Quads Hexagon layering stencil. When all 4 layers are stacked together, you can see the patterns they make in each quad when finished. The first quarter is fully covered with hexagons. The second quarter consists of 7 hexagons in the center, with lots of white space around it. The third quarter creates a diagonal pattern, and the last quarter features hexagons on the left 2/3 of the panel. As with all the Create in Quad layering stencils, each set of projects will look different even if you use the same 4 colors in a different order. I'm using 4 of the new colors, and I'm starting with Rose Water for the first stencil. This color is a pale, dusty rose, and I know it's going to be one of my new favorites since it seems like it would go with just about everything. The second layer is stenciled with Macaron, which is the most gorgeous pale purple. The 2 new purples, Macaron and Dried Fig, fit nicely into the existing purples, with Macaron being a darker and slightly cooler version of Lavender Glaze. The third layer uses Passion Fruit, which is a rich reddish purple and slightly darker than Plum Punch. I use Plum Punch a lot, so I'm looking forward to pairing these two together. The fourth layer is Tropical Punch, and it's a stunning cool teal which I'm looking forward to pairing up with Saltwater Taffy. This color draws the other 3 colors together and finishes the hexagons nicely. Here's a look at all 4 of the finished panels after I cut them down. Originally, I was going to make 4 masculine cards, but I ended up making 2 dad-themed cards, a birthday card and a thank you card. To create the extras for the 4 cards, I started by stamping on the block Dad with Tropical Punch. I stamped the first version twice to get a nice saturated impression. On the second inking, I only stamp it once, then heat emboss it with sparkle embossing powder. I layer the powder on twice to get a very shiny and sparkly layer. I also used the awesome anti-static powder tool and watermark ink for this. Next, I stamped on the block Love with Passion Fruit, and 1 layer was enough for this gorgeous color. Finally, I stamped on the block Cool using Rose Water ink. I stamped this a couple of times, and you can see exactly how cool it is after it has dried. I just love this color. Next, I'm going to stamp Oh My Word Happy Birthday with watermark ink on Tropical Punch cardstock. Then I heat emboss it with silver tinsel embossing powder from my stash. You can use regular silver embossing powder, but I wanted to feature a sparkly silver element on all 4 of these cards, and this was how I wanted it featured on this sentiment. I used 2 building blocks additions. The sentiments from Love Editions were already stored in one of my simple storage containers, so all I had to do was stamp Cool Editions to get the combination of sentiments I wanted for my Cool card. I used sugar cube ink and white embossing powder on Oreo cardstock for this. When using the anti-static powder tool on darker cardstock, I always like to brush off the extra powder after heat setting. I found this adorable makeup brush featuring Pan Pan from the Wee Bear Bears, and I thought it would be perfect for this purpose. I was previously using either a soft cloth or my sleeve. To assemble my first card, I layered both on the block words with silver glitter cardstock, then adhered them to a vellum stitched rectangle stacklet before popping up the U from Love Editions with black foam strips and attaching the vellum panel to the card. I was a little too indecisive about my second card. Looking back, I love the Macaron sentiment so much more than the silver sentiment on Tropical Punch cardstock. This led me to make a placement error when adhering the sentiment, so it's a lot lower than it should be. I really wanted to use the raised Pearson cut plate, and I was going to place it on the Rose Water card base, but trim the stenciled hexagon shape and pop it up in the center so the outer rays would show up behind it. Instead, I cut the rays right into the stenciled panel, which I absolutely love. I decided to place a vellum shadow behind the sentiment just to soften and separate it from the background since there's a lot going on there. I did the same with the individual letters, but cut that out of the video since it was quite tedious. I placed the panel on a rose border card base, then used a vellum panel to help with the placement of the happy letters above the scripted birthday. My mistake was centering the bottom of the word instead of the bottom of the swirl. Visually, it would have made more sense to use the base of the swirl as the bottom so that the entire sentiment would be centered properly from top to bottom. I could have left it as is, but I wanted to try and balance it out a bit by adding silver drip drops more on the top of the card than the bottom since the sentiment was bottom heavy. Next, I layered on the Black Cool with a passion fruit die cut, and it's obvious that I couldn't decide on which edition to use, so I tried them all before settling on Thanks for Being Cool. For the silver glitter element on this card, I cut silver hexagons using the Happy Hex dies and glued them in the centers of 4 of the outer hexagons. To finish, I popped up both parts of the sentiment with foam strips. For the final card, I glued the heat embossed word on an Oreo shadow layer and selected 2 mini strips You're the Best from my simple storage bins. The full sentiment reads, You're the best, Dad. Lucky to have you. The strips were heat embossed with silver tinsel embossing powder, so that provides the silver glitter element on this card. This would be a great card to give to Dad on Father's Day or pretty much any day of the year. Here's a quick review of all 4 cards using the Create in Quads hexagon layering stencil as a base and various on-the-block sentiment and additions. Which one is your favorite? I hope you enjoyed all the ideas presented in this video on how to use the new ink and cardstock colors, and I look forward to seeing all your projects. You can find all of these products in the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.